Hey, it's Kaero. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about a topic I keep seeing more and more coming up on Reddit and Facebook, and it's a topic of high amounts of debate within the Magic the Gathering community. I have an opinion on it, and I'm going to share it with you today. This is a video about mana weaving, which I believe is cheating. Now, if you are a mana weaver and you would say like, well, my intention is never to cheat, I'm going to get into that in just a minute. But if you are mana weaving, these are some things that you need to know, and you also need to be prepared for people to use this against you. So first of all, what is mana weaving? To put it simply, mana weaving is the process of separating your lands and your non-land spells into two piles, taking two non-land spells, putting a land in, taking two more non-land spells, putting a land in, repeating that process until you have an evenly distributed deck between two cards and one land, two cards and one land. So you have a predictable flow of what you're going to draw. Now already we can start to see a problem here because we're talking about a deck that is not random. Randomization is defined as bringing a deck to a state where no player can have any information regarding the order or position of cards in any portion of the deck, according to the official rules of Magic the Gathering. So right off the bat, if we can agree on a foundation that a mana weave deck is not random, that should be good enough for everybody to understand that mana weaving is not going to be acceptable. But the biggest counter argument that mana weavers will give you is that I am not stacking the deck, I am simply making sure that I don't get mana flooded or I don't get mana drought, and I draw a number of lands proportionate to what I need to cast my spells. That's part of Magic the Gathering. All right, how many games of Magic the Gathering have you lost by mana flood or mana drought? Or how many games have you won because your opponent flooded out or had drought? Mana weaving aside, if I were to propose to you a scenario where I could say, okay, these two people are going to play a game of Magic the Gathering. This person on the left here is never going to flood out and they're never going to have mana drought. This person over here, sometimes they're going to flood out, sometimes they're not. Would you say that that's a fair matchup? Just because you're not sitting there scheming, hiding cards in your sleeves, or you're pulling cards from under the table like I'm pulling my combo to the top of my deck, doesn't mean that you're not stacking the deck. There are egregious versions of stacking the deck, like I'm cheating and literally putting my win con on top at a certain point, but this is still deck stacking. Now, here's another thing that they'll say. Mana weaving is not a big deal because I'm making sure after I mana weave to randomize my deck so it doesn't matter because my deck is going to be randomized after. I just want to make sure the lands and the spells are divided before I do that. That doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. So if your goal is to have a randomized deck, everything that you do prior to that will not count, including mana weaving. And the nefarious thing here, the thing that you have to watch out for, is you could say, okay, you want to mana weave your deck, but if you bring it to sufficient randomization, I don't have a problem with that because it's going to be random and makes you feel better. That's fine. Go ahead and do it. But there's where you have to watch, because if somebody mana weaves, they might have an intent inside their old skull there to say, I'm going to mana weave this deck. I'm going to tell the other person that I'm going to bring it to sufficient randomization so I don't have any knowledge of what's coming, but I'm actually not going to do that. And so that should kind of cue you off a little bit when somebody is mana weaving. Again, as I said, I'm going to extend an olive branch because I know some of you go down to the local game store and then somebody said, hey, I mana weave, just it helps my efficiency, it helps to stop clumps or whatever. And you kind of, it's in this gray area where some people don't think that it actually is hurtful or it's damaging or it's unfair, but it actually is. So my advice to you is if somebody's mana weaving against you, don't immediately come across the table and just be like, cheater, and call them out, because they may be doing it with no ill will at all. They just might not understand, or they might think that it helps them in a certain way or whatever. But it is 100% superstition. If you're mana weaving and you're bringing your deck to randomization, it's not going to help you at all. Just make sure you do a good shuffle. Everybody does a good shuffle. You pass your deck to the opponent. Make sure that you're shuffling other people's decks and not just cutting them, and you won't have a problem. I'm bringing this up just for awareness because I know that there's people out there that technically you are cheating, but you're not meaning to. But if you are a mana weaver and your full intent is to deceive people and cheat and stack the deck in a way that you have prior knowledge that the other person doesn't, I'm just going to give you a warning. Not only are you hurting the other player, you are hurting the game as a whole, but you will be caught eventually. Even professionals who have mana weaved have been caught, and you're probably going to get over on people for a while, okay? If your goal is competitive play, you're going to rise up the ladder and you're going to get up to a point where people are good enough at this game to recognize that you are doing this. You are going to get caught and you're going to be disqualified, and all your work will be for nothing. So, trying to help you out too. Let me just make one thing clear though. Mana weaving actually is allowed per the rules of Magic the Gathering. You can stack the deck, you can weave, you can order it however you want as long as you bring it back to randomization. The problem is, by weaving, you may insufficiently shuffle, and as a byproduct of that, you may have not a randomized deck, and if that's spotted by a judge, they could disqualify you. It would be a similar thing, right? You have to go sleeve up your deck and you want red sleeves. You buy 2 packs of red sleeves. The color is slightly off, but you don't notice. You go to a high level play, you sleeve your deck using some of these sleeves from one pack, some from the other, and an opponent spots that technically these are different colored sleeves. Well, without your even knowing, you committed an infraction there because some cards are now marked in your deck. So in summary, don't mana weave. There's no benefit to it, and at worst, your opponent is going to assume that you're doing something to try to stack your deck and manipulate the game. So why even do it if it's not beneficial? Thanks for watching. If you have any comments about mana weaving or things that you have witnessed before, I'd love to hear them in the comments below. Thanks for liking, thanks for subscribing, and have a great day.